So how we can be happy at work. So having a scope, be possible to express ourselves and our emotion inside the environment. And about that, I strongly recommend inside your organization do an emotional intelligence course. That means that you can apply your emotional intelligence in your business. And then, of course, there is like the respect of people in terms of organizational justice. It's a really broad concept in terms of like papers, etc. But basically, organizational justice, that we know why we take decision and the rules are the equal for everybody.
Hey Giulia, thank you so much for joining me on our culture change conversations, where we talk all about culture, what's going on, how it impacts us at work, and also how it impacts general society. And I think you're in a really good position to talk about this because of the path that you're taking at the moment and the space that you're navigating for yourself. So please introduce yourself.
Hi Celicia, nice to meet you again. So I'm from Italy, and I am an entrepreneur in soft skills at the moment, and I'm taking a PhD in inclusion and diversity and equity from October this year. I'm also a coach since 2023 in ICF Federation, and this is like who I am right now. Then I change a lot compared to like 2 years ago, but this is who I am today.
Fab, that's so interesting. So where are you going to be doing your PhD?
I'm doing in Milan, in a communication university. So we are specialized in communication. The reason why is because my PhD question is about how we communicate diversity, inclusion and equity in a way that is really inclusive for everyone and avoid backfires, like people don't feel included in our communication about inclusion and diversity.
This is so topical right now. I don't know if you've seen the news, what's going on in the UK at the moment, where there's lots of race riots happening after a really tragic brutal murders that happened in Southport. And what that's done is then sparked off the far right, which is not unusual in the UK. I think a lot of people look at the UK as this really progressive, really forward-thinking, liberal society, which it can be definitely. And often they look at the UK in comparison to a lot of other European countries where we see far more far-right governments or parties in Parliament, and think that the UK isn't also got a lot of problems with far-right nationalism, but I really think this is a really good indicator to show that actually the problem is global, is worldwide, and there is a problem with it in Europe. So I think this topic around DEI and how to make sure everybody is included is really important. And so I wanted to ask you, first of all, because I read actually a couple of your posts on LinkedIn when you talk about workplace happiness, and that's what you're focusing on. So I want you to explain to us what the links are between DEI and then being able to achieve happiness at work for the majority of people.
Okay, so happiness at work is a very broad concept. So I always say that when we talk about happiness at work, we have like a percentage, that a huge part that is belonging to our employer, but we also have a part that is coming from us. So do we want to be happy? So this is the first statement I want to say. So we don't have to put 100% of responsibility on our employer. We always have the choice to be happy. So this is the first thing. Then how we can be happy at work from an employer point of view. So what can an employer do to get people on board and be happy? So first of all, our research say that we need a scope. So without a scope, so why I'm working, for what reason, what is the reason my company is alive? If you don't have a scope, it's more difficult to be happy inside your organization. Then there is also and this is come to belonging, right? So if we have the same scope, then we belong to the same environment.
Can I just double check something? When you mean scope,
Yeah.
do you mean values?
No, when I talk about scope, I talk about really the reason why we are working. As
Okay.
a company, as a whole.
Okay.
Then, of course, you go to value. Value are very important. But what we understood is also that value are generalization, right? So love is different for me and from you. If we take the same, if I ask you, take a picture of love, will be different from me and from you, right? Because we have different experiences. So value are generalization. Usually people, even if they have the same value, they speak in a different way. So if we made the idea, if we have the same idea, but we speak such in a different way, actually we think we don't have the same idea at the end. Because we remain the superficial part. And so value, it's a very important topic, but actually we're not able to explore in a real way inside the organization, even if there is a lot of research on, starting from the 90s. So we have the first PO fit, so people in organization fit, that is based on value. It's possible to have the same value, but actually we don't know if we have really the same idea about the same value. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And another thing it's very important about value is that there is a research, I think it's quite old, it's 2017 or something like this, that it said that already there 80% of the company listed in United States Stock Exchange declare the same values.
Okay.
And one of them is sustainability and people first.
Okay. It's getting interesting now.
So this is really a broad topic about values. So let's rewrap what your question. So how we can be happy at work. So having a scope, be possible to express ourselves and our emotion inside the environment. And about that, I strongly recommend inside your organization doing an emotional intelligence course. That means that you can apply your emotional intelligence in your business. And then, of course, there is like the respect of people in terms of organizational justice. It's a really broad concept in terms of like papers, etc. But basically, organizational justice, that we know why we take decision and the rules are the equal for everybody. Like very, very simple basis things. So I think these three things will allow you to have a happy workplace. Then there is work-life balance, all the stuff we always bring on the table. But for me, it's less important compared to the things I said before, but it's my personal opinion, not the general view.
So you're saying really structurally, those things are the most important to have in order to have a higher success level of people being happy in a working environment, but also plus all the other things that we already know, having a good work-life balance, having good culture, team fit, good benefits, being paid £1 million a year, everyone. I'm only joking, but you know that all of those things, right, are really key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I think is fascinating, because a lot of the time, you know, both you and I work in DEI work, inclusion work now, and I think a lot of the things that a lot of organizations miss, where I spend a lot of my time trying to get organizations to understand what they need to invest in, is structural change, right? And it's so difficult, structural change, because like anything that's structural is that it takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more, and so the time is money. So there's a bigger investment, but there is more sustainable results over structural change, rather than would you call it functional change? I don't know what the other would be, to be honest with you, but I love the fact that you highlight those things, and I think that's really valuable for people. I wanted to ask you something actually, because I watched Scott Galloway, who I really enjoy, even though he's really bro-ish, but I like the bro-ish. He talks for the guys, you know, he's talking to guys, talks for the guys, and he was talking about you know, he's been a very successful entrepreneur, and his most recent venture is quite small in comparison to the things that he's done before. And so for him, retention and talent retention in particular is really important for him, because obviously talent retention is something that costs a lot of money for organizations. And he actually said the number one thing that keeps people at work in a job is having a friend at work, and not necessarily compensation and not necessarily culture, etc. Although obviously those things are going to be important, but the number one thing that's going to keep them is being able to have a friend at work. I wondered if you'd seen anything to do with that in terms of the data that you've worked on, if there are any other elements that are linked to you making friends at work and how important that relationship is for you to be able to stay in a workplace.
So I think empirically, we can have plenty of example that this rule can work. But scientifically, I am not aware of any kind of experiment related to that, basically because it's very difficult to define what is a friend. And each and every one has his own perspective. About retention, I want to add one point, that it's true that retention is a KPI that gives us the idea how good an environment is for you. But there is also another thing that sometimes companies try to keep talent as much as possible. But is the best thing for the talent? It's impossible maybe right now to answer as an employer, but it's something we need to also put the attention on. So it's not always the right thing for the person to stay. Sometimes to grow really and reach their full potential, they need to go away and then come back a few years later. But this kind of flexibility, like the thing is that, do I want the best for my employee? Yes or no? Or I want the best for my employee, but in my radar, so in my company. It's of course it's a second answer we all get, but it's also another point of view that I want to put on the table. That sometimes retention is okay, but it's not the best for the people.
It's not best for you as an individual always.
Yes, this is what I think.
No, I completely agree. And I think that we're seeing that more and more, starting with the millennial generation, where people's, average tenure is like 2 to 3 years, and then they're going to other places, that we're jumping around. And even Gen Z, they've been into the workplace, for a few years now. And it is very normal for them to jump around in comparison to our grandparents and our parents, who worked with quite a different kind of structure where they were encouraged to show loyalty. Do you think that is necessary? Or it is, no, sorry, that's the wrong question. Do you think that the culture of changing where you work every couple of years is something that is going to be the norm?
I don't know. Because usually, no, I'm telling you, because usually when there is a huge trend, there is also another trend that is going in the opposite direction. So we don't know. But what I give you also an example that I have done when I was a manager, because for 12 years I've been a manager in a multinational company. And one day I had this super talent guy that came to do his internship. And he realized his full potential at the end of the internship. So that means that when he came, he didn't have the clue to be that good. So at the end, I was in the position to hire him. And I say, this is your contract, you can stay. But I strongly suggest you to take the second year of the other 2 years of university. We have 3+2, because you can get so much more. And you always can come back to work. It did that. It did its first abroad experience thanks to university, and now he's working in one of the top 10 multinational company all around the world.
Wow.
And this is for me a successful story as a manager, right? And that's what I say. It's sometimes, of course, I needed desperately someone good in my department, but still you have to, be generous somehow. This is what
Well,
I say.
that requires a certain level of emotional intelligence, right? Which to me, I want to talk about. There's a couple of things I want to talk about because obviously we know each other from working at a company, which I personally think lacked a real level of emotional intelligence in leadership, which I think is why someone like you, people like you and I, have to go. I want to know how you think that we can encourage more emotionally intelligent leaders for the future. The second question is if you think that by having more equality in terms of different genders, different ethnicities, etc., will help us to get there.
Okay, to answer to the first question, is leadership with emotional intelligence. I think it's mandatory and it's like something it's already known since 10 years, I think. There are research showing that leader with a better emotional intelligence actually lead better and also are better for the company because are more able to drive changes that nowadays are really one of the things we're facing every day. How we encourage that? So of course you can put training inside the organization, etc., but it's always a personal call. So you work on your emotional intelligence because it's a work. As everything you have to learn, it is a skills you have to develop, you need to work on. It's a personal call.
It's a
So
skill to develop, you think?
yes,
And
absolutely.
do you think some people have more of that skill than others?
So it's like you are more developing the skills, but basically all human being has emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Mm? So it's a chemical thing. So the brain, how it works, etc. So we all have emotional intelligence. The things we develop one skills, it's because we want or the life put us on this path. But we all can do it. The thing is that do we want? And here we came on like how we assign bonuses at the end of the year. If there is no bonus for people who are actually making people grow inside the organization, but only for people who are getting the best result financially that are absolutely important and not say no, then we don't force the change. Because for me, who is a good manager? A manager who make people grow. So how many people in your department that are considered as a talent are actually growing, like taking new position, going somewhere else, etc. This is also a KPI, for example, that force you to use emotional intelligence. Otherwise, people won't follow you as a leader. So this is one thing. Then to answer to your second question, that was like about diversity, how diversity can. So I have an idea about diversity that. So nowadays we are forced to talk about diversity based on gender, race, and so on, because as human being we didn't realize yet that diversity is one human being is diverse to another and it's here for a reason. So we strongly believe that everybody in this world is here at the same time because the world needs us and we have a gift to give to the world. So unfortunately, since we don't have this perspective yet, we still need to put label to people to see them as diverse. But you are unique, I am unique, and this is why we are diverse. What we need to encourage is see the other as somebody, as a gift inside the organization, even if it's sometimes a big problem. We know we work in organization for many times. So for me, what will help is start to think about people as human soul bringing something to this world. Then unfortunately we are not there yet, and so we are forced to put this role in order to have people able to express themselves inside the organization. But for me it's not the future, it's just what we need right now. I don't know if I answered to your question, but I hope in the future we won't be forced to do that.
I think that's what we hope for in the future. I do think, though, that in some way that we probably always will as human beings, because I think that there is a level of our consciousness that always has some kind of tribalness to us. that we'll always have to consciously work towards being diverse and inclusive towards people. I think we've got a long way to go anyway, that we can somehow structurally change what we have. But I think that there will always be an element that we'll have to work on. Like you said, like our emotional intelligence is a skill. I think that the being diverse, equitable, and inclusive, if we're going to use, the terminology that everybody knows as well, I think that's also a skill that we will have to just constantly have to keep training and upgrading and becoming more evolved. Those are my thoughts about that. I wanted to ask you about, because DEI is different in every market, right? So, for example, when I work with clients, global clients, and they want to have better inclusive policy or marketing in maybe 3 or 4 different regions across Europe or America, etc., right? And what always happens is that there's an issue between different markets and their expectations. And so, because all markets are in different places. Poland, for example, I'm working on a project which includes Poland, Poland, Italy, the UK, and Sweden. Very different, so different, in so many ways, historically, politically, the actual, the population makeup is so different. So what DEI looks like in Sweden looks entirely different to what it looks like in Poland. I'd really love to know, because I actually find Italy such an interesting market, and I don't find that the data for Italy is as rich as other markets. But obviously you're Italian, you're based in the Italy market, and I'd love to know what the Italian market is focused on when it comes to DEI.
So I think that so we are talking a lot about gender gap. So this is the focus of our government. Everything is about gender gap. But I want also to say that there are some sectors in Italy where we have blue quote because we don't have enough men. For example, teaching in high school, elementary school, we don't have enough men. And this is, I don't want to say a problem, but it's we miss something for our children, because there is also a balance in that. So of course in companies the focus is also on that, because we have the European community that it's really watching on this KPI. Do we have enough women? There is of course a backfire on this, because sometimes we don't have enough women to hire in a certain position because we don't have enough candidate, or we don't have female enough prepared in this field or whatever. And so it's becoming a topic of discussion on that. Then what we have in diversity inclusion, basically I will say right now this is the discussion, because in terms of like ethnicity, racial, etc., we do have we start right now to have a community that is mixed. Mixed Italian, but it's not like UK, where there is a huge community since many years. It's something relatively new. We're talking about 20-30 years, and so it's still under development. I believe will be the next topic, but at the moment I don't see so much inside the organizations.
Yeah, no, of course. When I'm looking at the different like data points for Italy versus Poland versus Germany, right? We both have worked in Germany. Is that Italy and Poland, for example, they racial diversity is just not a bigger thing there, because they just don't have the different communities within society. That doesn't mean that there aren't issues for the people who are there. Sorry. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that are relevant in terms to racial equality, because I think racial equality is relevant wherever you go. But the impact of racial inequality, etc., is not the same in those markets. So it's really interesting to hear the things that are a key focus for Italy, because I knew it was gender from some of the work that I've been doing recently, but I just wanted to double check on what that looks like in Italy, what gender equality looks like. What's driving the gender inequality for women in Italy? And then my question is, no, let's answer that one first, and then I'll wrap up with a final question I really want you to answer.
Okay, do you answer to this question?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So, so I believe that now we are at the point where we're talking so much about gender gap that we believe that something is moving. But if we look at the KPI, actually, we don't have such an increase in the last few years in terms of females in great position, like a board position or inside some market as automotive, for example, etc. So for me, what we need to do is start to change the debate around this thing. I don't know how, but we need to communicate in a different way in order to allow more women to feel good in these positions, to feel allowed to express themselves in this position. And then we will have more women. So how we can, what is blocking us to do that? To be honest, I don't know, but I think we need to, I don't know, but I think we need to change the dialogue between men and female, to be honest. This is the only message I want to pass, because I don't know what is not allowing us to develop, but for sure the way we are communicating is not helping in this gender gap thing.
In Italy in particular, or is that more of a global thing, you think?
It's, for me, it's global, but in Italy, that it's where I see the news and everything, because I live here, it's too much, you know, like you have the rejection of this subject because it's too polarized. So, for example, LGBT community, I think in Italy is a 5-7%, right? And we are only represent a part of it in our communication, in our policy, etc. But all the rest, so 95% of people are not feeling inside this. And so where is the equity? Where is the inclusion? If we are talking only about the 5%, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying we need to change this proportion somehow and make people feel part of this change. Change the dialogue, because now it's imposing something. When you impose something, it's the first step. This is what like government needs to do in order to drive the change. Okay, so this is the first step. But then how we deal with that something that is imposed to us, in order to have people commit, we are going back to the scope.
Yeah.
How can I contribute to the scope? How can I realize that what I'm doing is important for that scope? What is the impact for my country if we reach this goal? You know, so we need to change, in my opinion, this. Otherwise, we are going to actually have more division instead of more like I would say commitment. And what's happened is that at the end, women will be like not feel good in joining the organization, and they were spontaneously not joining.
Well, that leads on to a really great conversation, right? Because we both worked somewhere, well, in my experience, that in a tech company that was relatively diverse, especially like by gender. Not when you got to senior leadership, it was very, very male heavy. And even the culture for me was incredibly masculine. It was highly competitive, highly aggressive, completely focused on data points. And data points really irritate me because there's no context behind the data. I hate when people just focus on numbers. They're like, what are the numbers? It's like, okay, great. 30% of people do X, Y, Z. Okay, but what's the reason why they do X, Y, Z? What's the thing that has made these people behave this way? And have we looked at these people, say a very similar profile of people in a different scenario, to see if they're also behaving like that? So what's the influence? And I think that a lot of that is quite feminine qualities, right? Digging down and understanding what's really happening, because it takes time, takes thought. And so for me, what I wanted to say was, we've worked in an environment, right, where it's very masculine heavy, and where women were kind of lip service in some ways. We're told that, you know, women are really important, and they had a lot of conversations about gender equality and wanting women to be part of senior leadership team, but never making it happen. And I wanted to ask you what you think is important for women's happiness at work, because globally there is an issue with women not being happy at work, and some of that of course is our own agency, but a lot of it is structural. A lot of our happiness, it relies on the fact that the working structure that we have doesn't allow women, especially women if they've got caring responsibilities, children, parents, family members, etc., to be able to be successful at work and be happy. What do we actually need? What do you think?
So, so I think we go back to culture, right? So organizational culture. So flexibility is something that is needed. So all this, let's say, work-life balance to be happy at work, both for female that for men. What's happening is that for females sometimes it's important, more important in a man to be around, I will say, like to have also an important private life because of the children or taking care of the parents. This is a social thing. So how you solve that? We have plenty of things. Like, for example, there is one communicator in Brazil that say the only way we can solve this issue between female and male is give parental leave forced to male for 6 months as we have for female. So at the employer look, we will be the same, but at the end is not right this, because after the 6 months maybe the male wants to go back to work and a female won't. So or she wants to go first. So I think that what I want to say at the end of this conversation is that when we're talking about the possibility to manage time in a way that is that can fulfill you, it's really a personal issue. So more you have flexibility, better it is for a woman to be at work, in my opinion, but in general. So I want to say that this is an issue that it's very important to women, less to men. It's important. So for me, what is important for a woman is that we start not to judge choices because of gender. I don't know if I express myself well. So if I want to stay at home because I have a kid and I want to stay home for several hours, but I still deliver, this is a choice that can be made by men and female at the same time and should not be judged for both of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that the return to office mandates that many companies have been enforcing over the last couple of years post-COVID has really impacted women largely. And I think we talk about it as though women are naturally more caregiving, right? And it's not. I don't believe so. I don't believe women are more naturally more domestic. I don't believe women are naturally better caregivers. I don't believe it. I know people will say that different. We have no idea because we've been conditioned socially for so long to take that role. We actually don't know if it's innate to women. It feels innate now because everybody's been doing it for hundreds of years, but I don't believe that we are naturally more domesticated or more caregiving than men are. In the same way, I think we've been conditioned to be like that. I think they've been conditioned to be opposite. So the flexibility is crucial for women because we take on a different set of responsibilities with home life, and the gender pay gap, the higher pay is crucial for men because they take on a different responsibility financially. So that at the moment it kind of all makes sense in this old structure that we have, right? It makes sense that, but the structure that we have is slowly being dismantled. So what's happening is that the structure is no longer really there, but the principles of the structure is still there. and it's not necessarily working for everybody, which is why flexibility is key, which is why emotional intelligence is key, which is why diversity in thought, in background, in ethnicity, in gender, in lifestyle is key, because the foundation is asking us, is almost at ground zero, and it needs to be rebuilt, which means the principles need to be rebuilt. Thank you so much, and maybe I'll ask you again after you've finished your PhD to come back on.
Yes, thank you, Celicia. Can I add just one thing before we stop?
Yeah, sure.
About the Olympic Games, I just want to say something, right? So everybody around the globe, from US to China, Australia, wherever in the world, are looking at Olympics, like the majority of people.
Yeah.
And everyone, it's like, of course, like it's a big fan of his own country, like I'm supporting Italy, maybe you are supporting UK, whatever, but what it's it's like everybody can recognize themselves in these guys that are actually putting all this effort just for one day of celebration. You can not like Djokovic, but you admire him for what he's doing. You cannot like, I don't know, judo as a sport, but you admire the first medal of Brazil, gold medal for Brazil. So what I'm saying is that when we come to like heroes, right, hero's journey, go to some difficult path, and then you keep going and trying, and then you finally succeed. Everybody is with you. No matter the gender, no matter the race, no matter whatever, the age, from elder to children. So we need to come back to that people love people.
Yes.
When they're doing right thing for humanity, I will say, right?
Yes.
So this is the last message I want to leave. So people love people when we actually work for people.
Yes, I completely agree. I love that, because I think it feels very idealistic, right? But that's the goal. That's what we are working for. And sometimes we get frightened to say it because it feels very like, this is impossible to achieve. I actually don't think it's impossible to achieve if we stay focused on that goal, is that we're supposed to really just embrace people for people, because the fact of the matter is that we're not that different. We're not that different. All of these identities, etc., have been put on us to divide us, but actually we're all the same. Like whenever I go away to a different country, I'm like, every house is the same thing. Every main street has the same stuff. Every family or every culture is really focusing on the same things. It's just different food, different music, different language, but it's all the same, right? So I really love that as an ending message. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Celine.